Sometimes in life, a series of events transpire which were so painfully obvious ahead of time that even if you knew what was going to happen weeks or months in advance, you can't really even gloat about it because everyone should have seen that series of events coming. And when we're talking about this hopefully very, very brief trend of really slim phones, I think we are talking about exactly one of those scenarios. When we started seeing leaks and hearing rumors about this S25 Edge, a phone that would be really slim, but would have a fairly small battery. You wouldn't have a proper camera setup that you would expect to see on a device of that price range. I think a lot of us immediately said, who exactly is this device for? And the answer was, it's for Samsung to compete against the iPhone here. But then you've really not answered the question, because then who is that device for? That's a phone that's also very, very slim and only has one camera. These are both phones where you're sacrificing the features that people pretty vocally tell you that they want in exchange for slimness. Most phones are already pretty slim. I'm not sure how this really helps anything, how this actually improves the phone. These just seem like expensive phones that are worse for the sake of being slim, which no one really cares about as far as I can tell. And I think that I can tell pretty clearly because now we've got these reports coming out. Samsung's ultra slim Galaxy Edge is already apparently dead. The initial report came out of Sammy Guru, but that has since been replicated and reconfirmed by OnLeaks and also by Ice Universe. Sammy Guru reporting Samsung only sold 190,000 Edge units. In comparison, 1.17 million S25s. That's a pretty big difference. 2.5 million Ultra phones all sold in that first month. I mean, this thing just did not sell. People voted with their wallets and they said, we don't want this thing. We don't see the point of this device existing. Incredibly predictable. And it makes me wonder how these massive corporations come to such dumb, obviously wrong-headed conclusions. In the instance of this Samsung phone, I think what they were doing was they were trying to do what Apple was doing. But again, like I said earlier, that doesn't really answer the question, because why did Apple do it as well? Now, I have to admit, I did think that there was a possibility that Apple's iPhone Air might sell okay. But apparently even Apple, could not sell a slim phone that is worse for the sake of being slim. This report coming from 9 to 5 Mac. iPhone Air orders slashed to almost end of production levels, says Nikkei. I believe that's how that's pronounced, Nikkei. I've seen it written many times, very rarely said out loud. Apple is drastically cutting iPhone Air production orders nearly to end of production levels, despite it only becoming available in China last week due to weak demand in other markets. Multiple sources briefed on the matter have said the total forecast has almost entered into production mode, dropping significantly compared to earlier productions. Only about 10% fewer orders compared with September, starting in November. And once again, the other phones that are thicker but have bigger batteries and better cameras and better thermals are selling quite well. This is just such a mind-boggling thing to me, right? Like, who thought this was a good idea? Who in Apple thought it was a good idea? And then who in Samsung said, yep, that's definitely something we need to copy? Excuse me, my voice has not quite woken up this morning. If I'm gonna play devil's advocate, the only thing I can really think of is that maybe Apple and then maybe Samsung both saw the hype around ultra-thin foldables and thought, wow, people really, really love really thin phones. And so we should make a normal slab phone that's also really thin. But that is completely missing the point of why people were hyped about super thin foldables. Super thin foldables fold. So when they're folded in half, you get something like this Galaxy Z Fold 7 that ends up being the thickness of basically a regular phone. That's really all we wanted. I think for most of us, that's really where we wanted to arrive at, is just the thickness of a normal phone. We wanted this to feel like a regular phone when we used it like a regular phone. And then, of course, by virtue of that, when you open it, it is remarkably thin, but that's almost like a side effect of this initial goal. But then you also have to contend with the fact that, yes, while the Galaxy Z Fold 7 had a lot of hype around it, and I do think that it has sold relatively well, quite well for a Z Fold device, there are still complaints about the fact that we don't have the big battery we wanted. We don't have the zoom that we wanted. It's a tremendous device. It's one of my favorite devices that Samsung has ever made. But the thickness came with a trade-off for Samsung, and that has drawn still some criticism. And that is going to be just as true for these slab phones, except that the slab phones also don't have a benefit to being thinner. So you get the sacrifice of, losing some hardware, but you don't get the benefit. There's no reason that a slab phone really needs to be thinner than most slab phones already are. With foldables, the slimming down made sense. There was a benefit there. With these slab phones, it's just all sacrifice. There's just no logical sense to it. And again, I just can't wrap my head around how we got here, how such large, successful corporations somehow tricked themselves into devoting all the research and development money towards making these two phones that I think most of us could have predicted weren't going to sell. And now we have Samsung following Apple once again, introducing their own XR headset, and it's a lot cheaper than Apple's. I'll give them that, but it's an $1,800 headset. And I'm just going to tell you, I didn't think Apple's Vision, what is it called? The Vision headset. I didn't think that was going to sell, and it didn't. And I don't think this is going to sell either. This is just entirely too expensive. I'm sure that both of them are phenomenal, amazing devices, but I think this is another one. I think this is another one of these things. And maybe you could say that in this instance, maybe this is Samsung kind of doing the dirty work for Google and making sort of like an aspirational device, a device that is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Showcase device for Android XR. And maybe they don't expect to sell very many of these. I doubt that they do. The controllers are sold separately, and it's $250 to add the controllers. Like, what are we doing? But I digress. That is neither here nor there. The topic for this video are slim phones and how they are dying a very rapid and very expected death. Guys, tell me what you think about this. Did you see this coming from a mile away as well? I think you probably did. Drop those comments down below. Did you buy an Edge or an Air? Maybe you can tell me why you thought that was going to be the phone for you. It might be an interesting conversation to have there as well. Subscribe for more content like this. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.